Before we begin tonight's journey, let me ask you something. When Rome fell in 476 AD, did it truly disappear? Or did it quietly continue, stronger, richer, and more organized than ever? And how did one city, standing between two continents, survive invasions, plagues, religious riots, and endless wars for more than 1,000 years? Welcome to History and Myth. If you enjoy deep, calm, real historical storytelling that feels like stepping inside the past itself, make sure to subscribe to History and Myth. This channel exists for those who want history told slowly, carefully, and truthfully. Now, dim the lights. Let the noise of the modern world fade. And step with me into the year 476. The fall that wasn't the end. In the western city of Ravenna, a young emperor named Romulus Augustulus was removed from power. There was no massive battlefield. No burning capital. No final heroic speech. A Germanic commander simply dismissed him. The imperial insignia, the symbols of Roman authority, were sent east. And in the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, in the magnificent city of Constantinople, Emperor Zeno received the message. The Western Roman Empire had ended. But here is the detail that changes everything. The Eastern Empire did not collapse. It did not fragment. It did not panic. It continued. The people inside its borders did not call themselves Byzantines. They did not think of themselves as successors. They believed, fully and confidently, that they were Romans. The Roman Empire, in their minds, had not fallen. It had simply shifted east. Constantinople, the unbreakable city. To understand why this empire survived, you must understand its capital. Constantinople was not just another city. It was deliberately built to dominate. Founded by Constantine the Great in 330 AD on the site of ancient Byzantium, it sat at a crossroads of continents, Europe on one side, Asia on the other. Trade routes flowed through it like arteries. Grain from Egypt. Silk from Asia. Spices from Arabia. Furs from the north. Every ship that passed between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean passed its waters. And surrounding it were the massive Theodosian walls, layered defensive barriers of stone and towers that made the city nearly impossible to conquer. Unlike Rome in the west, which was vulnerable to land invasions, Constantinople had water on 3 sides, defensive walls on the 4th, a powerful navy, and a centralized administration. It was designed for survival. And survival would become its defining characteristic. The machine behind the throne. Most empires fall because their institutions collapse before their armies do. But the Eastern Empire had something rare. An administrative machine. Inside the palace complex, officials worked daily with wax tablets and parchment. Taxes were recorded. Supplies were tracked. Soldiers were counted. The empire ran on paperwork as much as it ran on swords. This is not dramatic. But it is powerful. While Western provinces struggled with warlords and unstable leadership, the East maintained a functioning treasury, a professional army, organized taxation, diplomatic intelligence networks. Gold coins known as the solidus became trusted currency across continents. Merchants preferred Eastern gold because it was consistent and pure. Even barbarian kings in the West often copied Eastern coin designs. Economic stability was the empire's hidden weapon. A dangerous balance. But survival did not mean peace. Zeno ruled during a tense era. The empire faced threats from Gothic warbands in the Balkans, internal political rivals, religious division, Persian power in the east. Instead of launching reckless wars to reclaim the fallen western provinces, Zeno made a calculated decision. He redirected a powerful Gothic leader, Theodoric, toward Italy. It was strategic manipulation. Let one threat eliminate another. The Eastern Empire avoided massive military expense, and Italy changed hands without Constantinople bleeding for it. This pattern would define Byzantine survival. Diplomacy when possible. Gold when effective. Force when necessary. Never pride. Always calculation. A new emperor, financial genius. When Emperor Anastasius took power in 491 AD, he inherited unrest and financial instability. He did not seek glory. He sought balance sheets. He reformed taxation. He improved copper coinage so ordinary people could trade more efficiently. He eliminated deeply hated taxes that had encouraged corruption. And over time, quietly, carefully, he built up a massive treasury surplus. When he died, he left behind enormous reserves of gold. That gold would later finance conquests, wars, rebuilding projects, and survival during disaster. But peace never lasted. Persia, the eternal rival. To the east stood the powerful Sasanian Persian Empire. For centuries, Rome and Persia had been rivals. Border towns changed hands repeatedly. Fortresses were built, destroyed, rebuilt. One brutal conflict saw the city of Amida fall after intense siege warfare. The news reached Constantinople like all bad news did. Through tired writers. With simple words. And lists of casualties. The empire responded with reinforcements and stronger frontier fortifications. But something more dangerous was brewing inside the capital. The tension in the hippodrome. In Constantinople, the hippodrome was more than a sports arena. It was a political pressure chamber. Chariot racing factions, the Blues and the Greens, were not merely sports teams. They were political identities. They represented neighborhoods, religious leanings, and social alliances. Crowds of tens of thousands gathered. Chants could turn from cheers into political protests within minutes. Emperors had been threatened, even overthrown, because of unrest there. And as religious debates intensified over the nature of Christ and church authority, those factions became volatile. The empire was stable. But stability rested on thin lines of loyalty. And soon, a ruler would emerge who believed survival was not enough. He wanted restoration. He wanted expansion. He wanted Rome reborn. His name was Justinian I. And under him, the empire would enter its most ambitious, and most dangerous, era. But before we move into that golden age, ask yourself, was expansion a wise decision for an empire built on survival? Can ambition undo what caution preserved? And what happens when glory invites catastrophe? Now, we will enter the reign of Justinian, the rebuilding of Hagia Sophia, the reconquest of lost lands, and the arrival of a plague so devastating, it nearly ended everything. Before we continue, from which country are you watching Historian Myth tonight? And what time is it where you are right now? Subscribe to Historian Myth, because in the next chapter, the empire will rise higher than ever before, just before it faces its greatest disaster. While the Western world struggled with fragmentation, something very different was happening inside the Eastern Roman Empire. Markets remained open. Courts remained active. Ships continued arriving at the harbors of Constantinople almost every single day. To an ordinary citizen, the empire did not feel like a civilization in decline. It felt organized, structured, enduring. Merchants walked through marble forums speaking Greek, Latin, Syriac, and Armenian. Government officials reviewed tax ledgers under oil lamps. Soldiers drilled in formation within fortified barracks. This was not chaos. This was continuity. And continuity, in history, is far more powerful than sudden strength. The language of power slowly changes. Although the empire still called itself Roman, a quiet transformation was unfolding. For centuries, Latin had been the official language of administration. But in the eastern provinces, Greek was the language of daily life. Gradually, government records, military commands, and legal discussions began shifting toward Greek usage. Not because of rebellion, but because of practicality. Most citizens in the Eastern territory simply spoke Greek. This linguistic evolution did not destroy Roman identity. Instead, it reshaped it. The empire remained Roman in law, governance, and tradition. But culturally, it was becoming something uniquely Eastern. A fusion of Roman structure and Greek intellect. The army that guarded the frontiers. The strength of the empire did not come from one massive army, but from strategic deployment. Along the Danube frontier, fortified camps monitored northern movements. Along the eastern border, heavily defended cities faced the long-standing rival, the Sasanian Persian Empire. These soldiers were not temporary militias. They were professional troops. Paid regularly. Supplied by state logistics. Disciplined through Roman military codes. Unlike many Western forces that relied on temporary alliances with tribal warriors, the Eastern military maintained centralized command. This difference alone explained why one half of Rome collapsed, while the other endured. Yet maintaining such an army required something more important than bravery. It required money. And money required stability. The hidden strength, economic control. Gold flowed steadily into imperial vaults through trade and taxation. Egypt supplied grain. Asia Minor produced goods. Trade routes connected the empire to distant regions beyond the Mediterranean. The solidus, the empire's gold coin, became one of the most trusted currencies in the known world. Foreign traders accepted it without hesitation. Even rival kingdoms valued Eastern Roman gold more than their own minted coins. Economic reliability built international influence without needing conquest. And the emperors understood this deeply. They knew that an empty treasury could destroy an empire faster than any invading army. Religion, unity and division at the same time. Christianity had long been established as the dominant faith of the empire. Churches stood tall across cities and provinces. Priests, bishops, and theologians debated complex spiritual doctrines that ordinary citizens barely understood, yet passionately supported. But here lies a quiet tension in history. Religion united the empire spiritually, while simultaneously dividing it politically. Different theological interpretations sparked intense debates, sometimes even riots. Was Christ fully divine? Fully human? Or both in a unified nature? These questions were not just religious, they were political. Because supporting one doctrine could mean supporting one bishop, one region, or even one imperial faction. And in a city like Constantinople, theological disagreement could quickly turn into public unrest. The emperor as God's representative. Unlike many Western rulers who struggled for legitimacy, Eastern Roman emperors ruled under a powerful idea. They were chosen by divine will. The emperor was not just a political leader. He was seen as the protector of faith, law, and order. Ceremonies inside the Great Palace were filled with ritual precision. Silk garments, golden halls, and carefully choreographed court etiquette reinforced the image of sacred authority. Foreign ambassadors who visited the capital often described the court as overwhelming, not just politically, but psychologically. Everything was designed to project permanence, stability, divine order. And it worked. Because perception, in empire building, is often as important as military strength. Threats from the north. Beyond the Danube frontier, migrating tribes constantly tested the empire's defenses. Some came seeking land. Others came seeking wealth. And some came simply because movement was part of their survival culture. Instead of reckless warfare, Eastern emperors often used diplomacy. gold payments, strategic treaties, marriage alliances. These methods were not signs of weakness. They were calculated survival strategies. Why spend thousands of soldiers in endless wars, when controlled diplomacy could delay conflict for decades? This pragmatic mindset became one of the defining traits of the Eastern Empire. Urban life. A world still functioning. Inside major cities, daily life continued with surprising normality. Public baths still operated. Libraries preserved ancient texts. Scholars copied manuscripts by hand. Artisans crafted mosaics and religious icons. Street vendors sold bread, olives, and wine. Children played in courtyards. Philosophers debated in shaded porticos. To the average citizen, the idea that Rome had fallen would have seemed absurd, because their world still worked. And that psychological continuity created social stability that the West had already lost. A silent psychological advantage. Here is a detail rarely discussed in short documentaries. The Eastern Empire never experienced a complete psychological collapse. In the West, cities were abandoned, trade collapsed, and administrative systems disintegrated. But in the East, institutions never fully broke. Even during crises, governance continued. This created a powerful national identity. Not as survivors of a fallen empire, but as guardians of the true Roman legacy. And that belief shaped every political decision moving forward. The calm before ambition. For decades, the empire survived through caution, diplomacy, and careful administration. It avoided unnecessary large-scale reconquests. It strengthened borders instead of chasing glory. It prioritized treasury reserves over reckless military campaigns. From a strategic perspective, this was genius. But history has a pattern. Long periods of stability often give rise to rulers who believe they can achieve more. Restore lost lands. Reclaim past glory. Rewrite destiny. And soon, a ruler would rise who was not satisfied with survival alone. He dreamed of restoration, of unity, of rebuilding the Roman world under one crown. And that dream would bring both greatness and unimaginable suffering. But now, a deeper question emerges. Was the Eastern Empire strong because it avoided ambition? Or had it simply been waiting for the right ruler to change its destiny? And what happens when an empire that mastered survival suddenly seeks expansion? Because very soon, the throne of the empire would quietly pass into the hands of a man whose vision would reshape history forever. A man who would rebuild cities, rewrite laws, wage massive wars, and face a disaster so deadly it would empty entire streets. In the next we will explore the final years before his rise, the political climate, the palace power shifts, and the world that was about to welcome one of the most ambitious emperors in history. Before we continue this journey with historian myth, tell me, from which country are you watching right now? And what time is it where you are listening to this documentary? And if you are enjoying this calm, deep history experience, don't forget to subscribe to Historian Myth. Because the story is only getting more intense, more real, and far more dramatic. While the Western Roman world fragmented into kingdoms and uncertainty, the Eastern Empire endured, organized, wealthy, and psychologically unbroken. But now, a new question rises from the silence of history. What happens when an empire built on survival suddenly begins to dream of glory again? Can stability survive ambition? And can one ruler reshape the destiny of a 1,000-year civilization? Welcome back to Historian Myth. If you enjoy long, calm, real historical documentaries that feel like stepping inside the past, make sure to subscribe to Historian Myth before we continue this journey. Now, let us step into the early 6th century. A world where the empire is stable, but quietly preparing for transformation. A new era approaches. By the late 5th and early 6th century, the Eastern Roman Empire stood stronger than many of its neighbors. Its capital, Constantinople, remained one of the richest and most secure cities on earth. Granaries were full. Treasuries were stable. Administration was functioning with remarkable efficiency. Yet beneath this surface of order, political maneuvering inside the imperial court was constant. Power in the empire was rarely simple. It moved through influence, alliances, palace networks, and quiet negotiations behind marble walls. And in this complex environment, a man from humble origins was slowly rising toward the center of power. His name was Justinian. The rise of an unlikely heir. Justinian was not born into luxury. He came from a modest background in the Balkan regions of the empire, far from the golden halls of Constantinople. But he possessed something far more valuable than noble birth: education, discipline, and an extraordinary understanding of law and governance. His uncle, Emperor Justin I, had risen through the military ranks and eventually secured the throne. Recognizing Justinian's intelligence, he brought him into the imperial court. Inside the palace, Justinian observed everything: court ceremonies, legal debates, military briefings, religious disputes. He was not merely present. He was learning. Slowly, carefully, silently preparing. Constantinople at the height of order. During this time, daily life in Constantinople continued with structured rhythm. Ships arrived daily at the harbors. Scholars copied manuscripts in quiet scriptoria. Merchants negotiated prices in crowded markets. The hippodrome still roared with energy during chariot races, where thousands gathered not just for sport, but for identity, rivalry, and political expression. The blues and the greens were more than racing factions. They were social forces. Their cheers could support an emperor. Their anger could threaten one. And every ruler in Constantinople understood one truth: public mood mattered. Because the capital was not just the administrative heart of the empire, it was its emotional center. The weight of imperial responsibility. When Justinian officially rose to power in 527 AD, he did not inherit a collapsing empire. He inherited a functioning one. And that distinction would shape his decisions in ways history still debates today. Unlike emperors forced into emergency survival, Justinian had options. He could maintain stability, strengthen borders, preserve wealth. But instead, he chose something far more ambitious: restoration. Not partial restoration. Total restoration. He envisioned a Roman world reunited, North Africa, Italy, and former Western territories brought back under imperial rule. It was a dream that carried both brilliance and danger. The vision of a reunited Rome. To Justinian, the fall of the Western Roman Empire was not permanent. It was a temporary fracture. And fractures, in his mind, could be repaired. He believed the empire had a divine mission, not only to survive, but to reclaim its rightful legacy. This belief was reinforced by religious conviction. As a devout Christian ruler, Justinian saw himself as both emperor and guardian of divine order. Law, faith, and empire were inseparable in his worldview. And so, his reign would not focus only on warfare. It would focus on rebuilding civilization itself, reforming the laws of an empire. One of Justinian's first major ambitions was not military, but legal. The Roman legal system, accumulated over centuries, had become complex and scattered. Contradictions existed. Outdated rulings remained active. Legal confusion slowed governance. Justinian ordered the creation of a unified legal code. A monumental project. Scholars and legal experts worked tirelessly to compile, organize, and refine centuries of Roman law into a single coherent system. This became the Corpus Juris Civilis, a legal foundation that would influence legal systems in Europe for over 1,000 years. This was not merely administrative reform. It was intellectual empire building. The reconquest of North Africa. The campaign against the Vandals began in 533 AD. Imperial fleets crossed the Mediterranean, carrying troops, supplies, and the weight of imperial ambition. The battles that followed were decisive. Within a short period, Vandal resistance collapsed. Carthage, once a major Roman city, returned to imperial control. For the first time in decades, former Western territories were once again governed from Constantinople. Celebrations followed. Victory processions reinforced the idea that Justinian's dream was becoming reality. But victories bring expectations. And expectations demand continuation. The Italian campaign, a much harder war. Encouraged by success in North Africa, Justinian turned his attention toward Italy. But Italy was not North Africa. It was politically fragmented, militarily contested, and geographically challenging. The Ostrogothic kingdom controlled the region and would not surrender easily. When Belisarius launched the Italian campaign, initial successes were promising. Cities opened their gates. Imperial forces advanced steadily. Rome itself was eventually captured. Yet the war did not end quickly. Instead, it transformed into a long, exhausting conflict. Sieges, counterattacks, and shifting alliances dragged the war into years of continuous fighting. The hidden cost of endless warfare. While victories were celebrated, the financial strain on the empire increased significantly. War required continuous troop salaries, naval logistics, supply chains across long distances, fortification maintenance, administrative integration of reconquered lands. All of this demanded enormous funding. And funding meant higher taxation. For citizens across the empire, the economic pressure slowly grew heavier. Merchants paid more taxes. Landowners faced stricter fiscal collection. Provincial economies felt the weight of imperial ambition. The empire was expanding. But its resources were thinning. Persia watches from the east. While Justinian focused on western reconquests, the eastern frontier remained unstable. The Sasanian Persian Empire, a long-standing rival, observed the situation carefully. They understood something critical. The Eastern Roman Empire was committing massive resources to Western campaigns. This created opportunity. Tensions along the eastern borders escalated. Raids increased. Diplomatic negotiations became tense. And eventually, renewed conflict erupted between the two great powers. Now the empire faced a dangerous reality. War in the west. Pressure in the east. And a population still recovering from plague. Overextension, the strategic risk. From a strategic perspective, Justinian's campaigns were both brilliant and risky. He achieved territorial restoration unseen in generations. But he also stretched the empire's military and financial systems across vast distances. Holding reconquered territories required permanent garrisons. Local administration had to be rebuilt. Infrastructure needed restoration after years of warfare. In Italy especially, prolonged war devastated cities, agriculture, and population stability. Even when victories were achieved, the lands themselves were weakened. And weakened territories required even more imperial investment. The emotional impact on the empire. Inside Constantinople, public perception remained mixed. Some celebrated the return of Roman lands. Others worried about rising taxes and long wars. The empire still functioned. Markets were active. The government operated. Religious life continued. But beneath the surface, fatigue was growing. Not a dramatic collapse. Not rebellion. But slow, silent exhaustion. And exhaustion, in long-term history, can be more dangerous than sudden crisis. Justinian's legacy in motion. Despite immense challenges, Justinian refused to abandon his restoration project. His reign became defined by legal reform, architectural grandeur, military reconquest, religious consolidation. He was not a passive ruler. He was transformative. Yet transformation often reshapes an empire in unpredictable ways. Because while the map of the empire appeared larger than before, its internal strength was gradually being tested. And beyond its borders, new powers were rising. Watching. Waiting. Learning. But now, a deeper historical question emerges. Did Justinian restore the Roman Empire? Or did he unknowingly weaken it through overextension? Can an empire truly fight wars in multiple regions while recovering from plague and internal strain? And most importantly, who was watching the empire's growing exhaustion from beyond its frontiers? In Part 6, we will enter a new phase of rising external threats, shifting global power, and the long-term consequences of decades of war and expansion. Under Justinian I, North Africa returned to imperial rule. Italy was reclaimed after brutal warfare. Roman law was unified. Monumental architecture reshaped the capital. But behind every victory stood a question. How long can expansion continue before exhaustion takes hold? Can an empire fight on multiple fronts without weakening its foundation? And what happens when new powers rise during a moment of imperial fatigue? Welcome back to Historian Myth. If you value long, calm, real historical storytelling, subscribe to Historian Myth as we continue this journey through one of the most pivotal turning points in world history. Now, we move toward the later years of Justinian's reign, and the beginning of a global shift. The aging emperor and a changing empire. By the later years of his rule, Justinian was no longer the ambitious reformer of his early reign. Decades of war, plague, and governance had reshaped both the emperor and the empire. The treasury was no longer overflowing. The population had not fully recovered from the plague. Military forces were stretched across distant territories. Yet the imperial administration still functioned. Taxes were collected. Borders were guarded. Diplomacy remained active. The empire had not collapsed. But it had aged. And aging empires face new kinds of danger. The eastern frontier ignites again. While western territories demanded attention and resources, the eastern border with the Sasanian Persian Empire once again erupted into full-scale conflict. For centuries, Rome and Persia had competed for dominance in the Near East. Now, after years of tension, the rivalry intensified. Cities were besieged. Frontier fortresses fell and were retaken. Armies marched across harsh terrain repeatedly. These were not small border skirmishes. They were exhausting, large-scale wars between two superpowers of the ancient world. And unlike earlier conflicts, both empires were draining themselves simultaneously. A war without a true winner. The renewed wars between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Persian Empire lasted for years, with shifting victories on both sides. Neither side achieved permanent dominance. Instead, both suffered heavy financial losses, population decline, agricultural disruption, military fatigue. When peace agreements were finally reached, they often involved enormous payments. Gold flowed eastward in exchange for temporary stability. The empire survived, but survival was becoming increasingly expensive. And beyond these two ancient rivals, a new force was quietly forming in the deserts of Arabia. A new power emerges. In the early 7th century, a new religious and political movement began to unify tribes across the Arabian Peninsula. Within a few decades, this unified force would expand beyond Arabia and challenge both Persia and the Eastern Roman Empire. At first, neither great empire fully understood the scale of the coming transformation. Their focus remained on each other. They were locked in an old rivalry, while a new era was approaching from the south. History often turns not because of expected enemies, but because of unexpected ones. The death of Justinian, end of an era. When Justinian I died in 565 AD, he left behind a dramatically altered empire. Territorially expanded, legally reorganized, architecturally transformed, but also financially strained, demographically weakened, militarily overextended. His legacy remains debated even today. Was he the last great Roman emperor? Or the ruler whose ambitions accelerated long-term vulnerability? What cannot be denied is this: after Justinian, the empire would never again look quite the same. The age of confident restoration had ended. A more uncertain age was beginning. Internal strain after expansion. Following Justinian's death, maintaining control over reconquered lands proved increasingly difficult. Italy, already devastated by prolonged war, faced new invasions. The Lombards moved into the region, gradually taking territory and reducing imperial authority. North Africa experienced unrest. The Balkans faced incursions from Slavic and Avar groups. The empire was no longer expanding. It was defending. And defense across such vast territories required resources the empire struggled to provide consistently. A system under pressure. Despite all these challenges, the Eastern Roman Empire did not collapse. Its strength lay in adaptability. Administrative systems adjusted. Military strategies evolved. Regional governance shifted toward more localized defense structures. The empire was learning to survive in a harsher world. It could no longer rely on large-scale reconquest. It needed new methods. Flexible defense. Strategic retreat. Selective engagement. And above all, endurance. The psychological shift. Perhaps the most important transformation was psychological. Under Justinian, the empire believed in restoration. After him, it began believing in survival again. This shift in mindset would define the next centuries of Byzantine history. Because the world around it was changing rapidly. Persia, exhausted from decades of war, was weakening. And from the Arabian Peninsula, unified armies began expanding at extraordinary speed. Within a single generation, the balance of power in the Near East would transform completely. Ancient empires would fall. Borders would be redrawn. And Constantinople would face a challenge unlike any before. Now consider this. What happens when two ancient superpowers exhaust each other? And a new force rises in the vacuum they create? Can an empire that survived plague, riots, and endless wars adapt once more to an entirely new geopolitical reality? In Part 7, we will witness the dramatic collapse of the Persian Empire, the rapid expansion of Islamic forces, and the first direct confrontations that would permanently reshape the destiny of the Byzantine world. Before we continue this journey with historian myth, from which country are you watching this documentary right now? And what time is it where you are listening to this long historical story? Subscribe to Historian Myth. Because the empire is about to face a storm that will redefine its existence forever. In Part 6, we witness the final years after the reign of Justinian I, an empire expanded in territory, but weakened by decades of war, plague, and financial strain. The great rival, the Persian Empire, was still locked in exhausting conflict with the Eastern Roman world. Borders were unstable. Resources were drained. And both ancient superpowers were showing signs of fatigue. But now, a deeper historical question emerges. What happens when two giants weaken at the same time? Who rises in the power vacuum they create? And can an empire built on survival adapt to a completely new kind of enemy? Welcome back to Historian Myth. If you are enjoying this calm, deep, real historical documentary, don't forget to subscribe to Historian Myth before we continue this journey through one of the most defining eras in world history. Now, we step into the early 7th century, a century of crisis, transformation, and survival. The Great War between two ancient empires. At the beginning of the 7th century, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Sasanian Persian Empire entered one of the most destructive wars in their long history. This was not a minor frontier conflict. It was a full-scale struggle for dominance in the Near East. Persian armies advanced deep into imperial territories. Major cities in the eastern provinces were captured. Trade routes were disrupted. Religious and political morale began to decline. At one point, Persian forces even reached territories near the eastern Mediterranean, threatening the stability of imperial rule across the region. For the empire centered in Constantinople, the situation was becoming extremely dangerous. The rise of Emperor Heraclius. During this time of crisis, a new ruler emerged, Emperor Heraclius. Heraclius inherited an empire under severe pressure. Treasury resources were strained. Military forces were exhausted. Eastern provinces were under threat. Instead of accepting decline, Heraclius chose a bold and unconventional strategy. He reorganized the military structure. He personally led campaigns. And most importantly, he shifted the empire's strategic focus from passive defense to calculated counteroffensive. This was a turning point. Not just militarily, but psychologically. A war of endurance and strategy. Rather than confronting Persian forces directly in predictable battles, Heraclius launched strategic campaigns deep into enemy territory. These campaigns were risky, but they were also unexpected. Imperial forces moved across difficult terrain, targeting supply lines and weakening Persian operational strength over time. The war stretched over years. Victory did not come quickly. But gradually, the balance began to shift. Persian forces, already strained by prolonged conflict, faced internal instability and leadership crises. And eventually, the long war between the two ancient empires reached a dramatic conclusion. The collapse of the Persian superpower. After decades of exhausting warfare, the Sasanian Persian Empire began collapsing from internal revolts, political chaos, and military losses. What had once been Rome's greatest rival for centuries was now unstable and vulnerable. From a historical perspective, this moment was extraordinary. For the first time in generations, the Eastern Roman Empire stood without its traditional Eastern rival. But this victory came at an enormous cost. Cities were damaged. Economies were strained. Military forces were depleted. And just as the two ancient empires finished weakening each other, a new force entered the historical stage. The rapid expansion from Arabia. In the Arabian Peninsula, a newly unified political and religious movement had emerged with remarkable speed and cohesion. Within a short span of years, highly mobile and motivated armies began expanding beyond Arabia. Their expansion was swift. Persian territories, already unstable, fell rapidly. Key regions that had once been contested between Rome and Persia changed hands. New administrative and military systems began replacing older imperial structures. For the Eastern Roman Empire, this was a completely new type of geopolitical challenge. Not a familiar rival. Not a traditional border conflict. But a rapidly expanding power with momentum and unity. The loss of eastern provinces. As expansion continued, several of the empire's most important eastern provinces faced invasion and eventual loss. Regions such as Syria, Egypt, and parts of the Levant, long vital to imperial economy and grain supply, became battlegrounds. These were not just territories. They were economic lifelines. Egypt, in particular, had been a major grain supplier to Constantinople for centuries. Losing such provinces had long-term consequences. Reduced food supply stability. Decreased tax revenue. Strategic vulnerability. The empire was no longer a Mediterranean superpower in the same sense as during Justinian's reign. It was transforming into a more compact, defensive state. Adaptation instead of collapse. And yet, something remarkable happened. The empire did not collapse. Despite losing major territories. Despite decades of war. Despite economic and military strain. Its administrative system adapted. Military organization evolved into regional defensive structures. Local governance became more flexible. Resources were redirected toward core territories. Instead of overextending itself again, the empire began focusing on survival and strategic consolidation. This was a profound transformation. From expansion to endurance. Constantinople, still standing. Through all these global transformations, the great capital, Constantinople, remained unconquered. Its defensive walls, strategic location, and naval strength continued to protect it from large-scale sieges. The city was no longer the center of a vast reconquered Mediterranean empire. But it remained the heart of a resilient civilization. Scholars still copied texts. Churches still held ceremonies. Administrators still governed. Citizens still lived within its walls. The world around it had changed dramatically. But the empire endured. A new identity emerges. By the late 7th century, the empire was no longer attempting to fully restore the ancient Roman world. Instead, it was evolving into what historians now call the Byzantine Empire, a continuation of Roman governance adapted to a new medieval reality. Greek became more dominant in administration. Military themes, regional defense systems, began forming. Cultural identity shifted while preserving Roman law and imperial tradition. It was not the end of Rome. It was its transformation. Now, a powerful question remains. How did this empire, after losing vast territories and facing constant external threats, still survive for centuries more? What new military and political systems allowed it to endure when other great empires collapsed completely? And how did Constantinople remain unconquered despite repeated attempts across generations? In Part 8, the final chapter, we will explore the long-term survival, transformation, and ultimate legacy of the empire that refused to die. Ancient rivals collapsed. New powers rose rapidly. And the Eastern Roman Empire lost many of its richest eastern provinces. Yet something remarkable happened. Despite territorial losses, political pressure, and military exhaustion, the empire centered in Constantinople did not fall. Instead, it adapted. But now, the final and most important question emerges. How did this empire survive for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire? What made it stronger than other ancient civilizations that vanished completely? And what is the true legacy of the empire's history later called the Byzantine Empire? Welcome back to History and Myth. If you have journeyed through all 8 parts of this deep historical documentary, consider subscribing to History and Myth, where history is experienced slowly, deeply, and realistically. Now, let us enter the final phase of a civilization built not on sudden conquest, but on long-term endurance. From Roman Empire to Byzantine identity. Although modern historians use the term Byzantine Empire, its people never called themselves Byzantines. They called themselves Romans. Their laws were Roman. Their governance was Roman. Their imperial tradition was Roman. Yet over centuries, cultural and administrative evolution created a distinct identity. Greek became the dominant language of administration and intellectual life. Christianity became deeply integrated into governance and daily society. Military structures shifted toward regional defense rather than expansion. This was not a collapse of Roman identity. It was its transformation into a new historical form. A Roman Empire adapted to a medieval world. The strength of adaptation. Many empires in history fell because they could not adapt to changing geopolitical realities. But the empire centered in Constantinople repeatedly restructured itself. When expansion became impossible, it focused on defense. When resources declined, it reorganized administration. When external threats increased, it strengthened fortifications and diplomacy. The creation of thematic military systems allowed provinces to defend themselves more efficiently. This reduced reliance on large, expensive expeditionary armies. It was a strategic evolution, born from necessity, not choice. And it worked. The unbreakable walls of Constantinople. For centuries, Constantinople remained one of the most fortified cities in the world. Its massive land walls, naval defenses, and strategic geography made large-scale conquest extraordinarily difficult. Multiple sieges across different centuries failed to capture the city. Invading armies faced strong fortifications, defensive military planning, naval resistance, logistical challenges. The city became a symbol of resilience. Even when surrounding regions changed hands, Constantinople endured as a political, cultural, and religious center. Its survival alone extended the life of the empire by centuries. A guardian of knowledge and law. Beyond military endurance, the empire played a crucial intellectual role in world history. Classical Greek and Roman texts were preserved, copied, and studied within imperial institutions. Legal traditions based on the Corpus Juris Civilis continued influencing governance and judicial systems long after Justinian's era. Scholars, theologians, and administrators maintained a continuity of knowledge during periods when much of Western Europe faced instability. Without this preservation, many classical works of philosophy, science, and law might have been permanently lost. In this sense, the empire was not only a political state. It was a cultural bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds. Economic and diplomatic survival. Unlike purely militaristic empires, the Byzantine state mastered diplomacy as a survival strategy. It negotiated treaties, formed strategic alliances, used economic influence to delay conflicts, and sometimes paid tribute to avoid destructive wars. To some observers, this appeared as weakness. But historically, it was strategic realism. Because survival over centuries required flexibility more than pride. And while many empires chose constant warfare, the Byzantines often chose calculated endurance. Religious influence and cultural legacy. Religion remained central to imperial identity. Orthodox Christianity shaped law, art, architecture, and governance. Magnificent churches, mosaics, and theological scholarship defined the empire's cultural expression. Missionary efforts also extended influence beyond imperial borders, shaping religious development in Eastern Europe and surrounding regions. This cultural and religious legacy outlasted the empire's political power and continued influencing civilizations long after territorial decline. Gradual decline, not sudden collapse. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this empire is its ending. It did not collapse suddenly like many ancient states. Instead, it experienced a long, gradual decline shaped by continuous external pressure, economic challenges, internal political struggles, changing global trade routes. Territories were lost slowly over centuries. Power fluctuated. Yet the core state persisted far longer than most of its historical rivals. This alone makes it one of the most resilient civilizations in recorded history. The final legacy of endurance. When historians look back at the empire that continued after the fall of the Western Roman world, one theme stands above all others. Endurance. It survived internal revolts, deadly plagues, massive wars, territorial losses, economic crises, global power shifts, and still maintained governance, culture, and identity for generations. Its legal systems influenced Europe. Its cultural preservation protected ancient knowledge. Its strategic resilience reshaped medieval geopolitics. This was not merely the continuation of Rome. It was the evolution of Rome. The true meaning of the empire that refused to die. From the reign of Justinian I to the transformative struggles after the rise of new global powers, the empire constantly adapted rather than collapsing. It stopped chasing full restoration. It embraced survival. It redefined strength as endurance rather than expansion. And that mindset allowed it to exist for centuries after other great empires had vanished from history. Not through constant victory, but through continuous resilience. Now, as our journey comes to an end, one final question remains. Was the Byzantine Empire truly a fallen civilization? Or was it the longest continuation of Roman power in history? And if survival is the ultimate measure of strength, could it be considered one of the most successful empires ever? You have just experienced the full story, from survival after Rome's fall, to ambition, plague, wars, transformation, and legacy. Thank you for watching Historian Myth. If you enjoyed this deep, calm, real historical documentary, don't forget to subscribe to Historian Myth for more long-form history that feels alive, immersive, and truly connected to real events. Before you leave, I would love to know something. From which country are you watching this documentary? And what time is it right now where you are listening to this story? Because history connects us across time. Just as this empire connected the ancient world to the medieval future.